Good afternoon. Welcome to this live broadcast of our virtual meeting. This meeting includes the remote participation of members as authorized under Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021 due to the declared local health pandemic. For the record, my name is Carol Becker. I'm the president of the Board of Estimate and Taxation. I will now call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll so that we may verify the presence of a quorum.
Thank you. Board Member Fry.
Here.
Cogill.
Here.
Wheeler.
Present.
Bender is absent. Fletcher. President Becker.
Aye. Let the
Fletcher.
record. Okay.
There are 4 members present.
Let the record reflect we have a quorum. We will now proceed to our agenda, a copy of which was posted for public access to the city's legislative information management system, which is available at lims.minneapolismn.gov. For all voting, roll call will be used. So the first item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda.
So
I
moved.
have a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
We have a proper motion before us. Is there any discussion before the clerk calls the roll? All right. Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll for the motion.
Board Member Fry.
Aye.
Cogill.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye.
Bender is absent. Fletcher. President Becker.
Aye.
There are 4 ayes.
The motion passes and the agenda is adopted. So we have adoption of the minutes. Next is the acceptance of minutes from the June 10th meeting. May I have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Do I
Second.
have a second? We have a proper motion before us. Is there any discussion before the clerk calls the roll?
Just a quick piece. This is David Wheeler. A quick piece, I would say, just to call people's attention to it. On the towards the end, after 5 directions to staff, it said that we'll ask the finance. The staff was going to review the finance department's financial policy on projects older than 4 years. And that has happened. And I just want to be sure that when we get to directions to staff during our regular meeting, I have a suggestion, recommendation that I'd like to bring forward. I don't think it even needs a vote, but I just want to acknowledge the fact that that will be coming up in our regular meeting.
Okay, thank you. So that would be under direction to staff. Jackie, if you can help me remember that Mr. Wheeler will have a comment then, so I don't forget that.
I'll help you remember too.
With that, any other discussion on the minutes? We have a proper motion before us. Is there any discussion? We did the discussion. With that, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll on the motion.
Board Member Fry.
Aye.
Cogill.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye.
Bender is absent. Fletcher. President Becker.
Aye.
There are 4 ayes.
That motion passes and the minutes are accepted as presented. So discussion. We're at item 4 on the agenda, and that is a presentation by Public Works Department on its capital program. I'll call on Director Robin Hutchinson to present the report. Welcome.
President Becker and members of the committee, thank you so much for scheduling this so that I can present some information about our work in Public Works. I'm always pleased to present our progress on our capital, and we don't often have an opportunity outside of a budget conversation or an issue that we're experiencing to just talk about our work. So I welcome this opportunity, and I will just jump right in with a short overview. And do I tell you to move the slide? Who am I talking with on the slides? I'm at the limit of my technological savvy with these meetings, so thank you for your patience.
Just advance the slide.
Yes.
Sorry?
Just say advance the slide, Ms. Hutchinson.
Advance the slide, please.
Ms. Hutchinson, I often feel like I'm either flying an airplane or the Titanic when I do this, so I totally feel your pain.
Thank you. Public Works has a roughly $380 million budget A lot of that is in the enterprise funds, and that includes the capital work in the enterprise funds, as well as, general fund is a good portion. Our internal services, most of that is in fleet. We have a few other smaller internal services, special revenues, just assessments that come in. Today's presentation is primarily on our enterprise and capital funds and really focuses on our capital work. And today's presentation is also focused on questions that you submitted through Alan, who then passed them to me so I could be as responsive as I could be. You can go to the next slide. The first item that I'm going to cover is a progress report on our 20-year streets funding plan. As you know, this was adopted about 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, to provide an additional $20 million a year for the next 20 years to take care of our infrastructure. You can go to the next slide. We showed this to you at a meeting last year to demonstrate how we have planned ahead for that, taking into account the black line, which is the funding that we used to have, or base funding, adding to that the 20-year streets funding money that was new, to get a total amount of investment in our streets for the projected future. You can see that this was last year's, this is not this year's, this was last year's, and you can see that we're either right on or over programmed looking towards the future. And then in addition to that, we take this money and leverage for additional money by way of grants, and that's the lighter blue that you see on the top of the bars. I am going to talk a little bit about this. Keep this in your mind's eye as I go to the next couple of slides, because I am going to talk about our very early kind of backcasting on how we've been doing on this. And these big bars towards the right side of the chart will be something that I refer to. You can go to the next slide. So you may wonder why this is the first year we're able to start doing some backcasting. It takes a few years to close a single project out, and we're finally at a point where we have a good majority of projects for 27 and 2018 that are closed out, so we can take a look. And here's what we found, and we broke it out by programs, which is like paving, concrete work, things that happen all over the city, and then projects, which are discrete capital projects. I'll just sort of cut to the chase and say that for 2017, we were under by about $4 million, what we thought we would be. For 2018, 1.7. So this is exactly what I thought I was going to see, that it was going to take us some time to ramp up. We had said that from the start, that it was going to take us some time to ramp up. I believe we are well ramped up now, and that's reflected in the 2018 numbers. The 2019 numbers are not accurate enough to really put a lot of stock in, because it is only the programs and not yet the projects. We don't have enough projects that are closed out, but I anticipate we'll be about spot on based on what I'm seeing over the last couple of years. We do need to catch up. We do have to be consistent with the ordinance, and so when you look at the bars as you're going out into the future, we have significantly over-programmed in some of the years so that we can balance out the ramp-up years over an average of a 5-year time period.
Great.
You can go to the next slide, please. So just some reasons why the costs might be different. The programming is based on cost estimates. Cost estimates are done very early in a project. Bid prices vary year to year, certainly, and sort of material prices, which affects the bid prices. There's differences in quantities. We have change orders, so labor rates fluctuate as well. Sometimes the project finances shift. The assessments sometimes are different than what we anticipated. Sometimes we have late grant funding that comes in that offsets, and very often there's more utility work than we ever thought could happen on a single project, which is actually generates revenue for us that comes in and offsets the project. So that those are some of the things that we think are affecting why we kind of were low in the beginning, and we've got our eye on these as we move forward. You can go to the next slide, please.
Robin, can I ask one question before you move forward?
Yes.
So one of the concerns back when we were talking about getting money for streets, a really simple question was that the pavement condition index was getting worse.
Mhm.
With this money, will the pavement condition index get better?
It will, President Becker. It absolutely. We're gonna be around 79. That's where we want to be for really good, consistent maintenance versus reconstruction, and we're on track for that as we look at our 5-year average moving forward. So I have a lot of confidence in this program that our pavement condition will stay. And just forgetting about the numbers, what we want to do is keep our pavement in the condition where we don't have to reconstruct as frequently, which is much more costly.
And a second question, are we making any progress on alley paving in this?
President Becker, we are. The alley paving, it would show up in one of the programmatic areas. We do about 5 a year. We did a couple this year already, some that had never been paved before. So we are making some progress there.
Okay, thank you.
Next slide. So I was asked to give an update on the active capital projects, and that would be impossible in the time that we have. So I thought maybe the best way to break it down is to just go through the magnitude of our program. First, I'm going to show you the projects that started in 2019 that will finish in 2020. So started construction last year, will be done by the end of this construction season, and I'll just let you absorb what's on the slide. And then you can go to the next slide. Then we took out the projects that started in 2020 that will be finished in 2020. So all in this one construction year. And you can go to the next slide. And finally, we have 2 major projects which we classify as more than 2 years, 10th Avenue Bridge and Hennepin Avenue. And you can go to the next slide because we're going to talk about these just a little bit more. The 10th Avenue Bridge is about a $50 million project or so, critical transportation element. It connects the 2 largest job centers in the state, downtown, University of Minnesota. It has about 10,000 vehicles on it, which gives us a tremendous amount of opportunity to make it a bridge that works for everyone, people walking, people biking, people driving. I toured it a couple weeks ago with the crew. What you see there with the openness on the bridge deck is pretty much real-time pictures. That's what's happening right now on that project. Tremendous project, very exciting work out there. You can go to the next one. And the Hennepin Avenue, which is hard to miss in Minneapolis if you're downtown. We are wrapping up a lot of the underground utility work, and we'll be starting on the street work soon. This is a pretty iconic street, and we'll have a lot of features and amenities. There's a special assessment that adds to the elements on this street, and just a lot of excitement about this project. It will still take some time to finish this out, but I believe this is a project where doing it right is better than doing it fast. And you can go to the next one. You can go to the next one. Everyone knows what's underground here. It's a maze. Okay, I'm going to move through some other capital projects. I'll try and move quickly to not take too much time. There were some specific questions about our water projects. You can go to the next slide. And you can go to the next one because we'll go through each one of these. Along with the 10th Avenue Bridge, we've got a simultaneous project, which is the water main. Best method for reconstructing the water main, instead of hanging it to the bottom of the bridge again, which was done in the 1940s, not a modern solution. It's going to get dropped under the river. We are boring now to make that happen. And that is a pretty cool feat of engineering that it's a large team, it's a lot of work, and I think we're going to be really proud of what we did at the end of it. So it is much more secure. We're putting in a larger pipe. and we're looking forward to when this is complete. It won't be complete for some time. The boring should be complete in the next few months, which will be good. You can go to the next slide. A quiet project we've been doing is upgrading the water meters in every residential home in Minneapolis. We are cycling through neighborhoods of the city. This will create a lot of improved efficiency in meter reading. It won't be a human person. It will be an electronic reader. And this also provides the ability for our residents to track their own usage, which is something we've never been able to offer before. This will take it'll take another few years. It's a 7-year program to replace and upgrade the technology, but we're a few years into that already. Can go to the next one. We have a lot of electrical service rehabilitation. We've got old facilities at the Fridley campus. If you've ever been there and toured it, it's beautiful, but it is old, it is aging. The electrical distribution equipment needs a complete overhaul. It's a sizable project for us in capital dollars and worth mentioning. We're also creating the connection for solar, which will be installed at the Fridley campus. You can go to the next slide. The softening plant, it says chemical improvements, but it's so much more than that. We are doing a number of upgrades at the Fridley filter plant along with the new filtration system. This is another feature. This helps us remove, this is the critical process for removing organics, which comes in through the river. And it helps us to expand our storage capacity. And it also helps us with a number of related processes, like how we treat the lime when it comes out of the slaker. Very technical terms. Don't ask me about that in a question because I can't go any deeper than that. And we can move to the next one.
Before you move on to that, if I could just ask, we did the microfiltration a while ago to be able to do cryptosporidium. I'm understanding this is different, and I don't need a big, because I'm a social scientist, so I don't need a big explanation of the difference. But is this that same type of technology or just a different technology?
I'll actually, President Becker, I'll actually talk about it on this slide. So what you're referring to was the granulated activated carbon test that was done on the Fridley site, which is a better, well, at least for our environment, a better, more efficient way to filter. This new Fridley filter plant project that's on this slide is the thing that does that. Okay. So the new plant includes the GAC, granulated activated carbon process. That's included in this project, which is a much bigger project and is the flagship project at Fridley. This is $63 million of clean, safe drinking water right here.
That's good.
This project is going really quite quickly. When I visited last year, it was a 6-story hole in the ground. If you visit now, it looks like it's about done, and we're going to start testing it soon, opening it up and testing it soon.
Very cool.
We can go to the next slide.
So before
there was some questions.
can I ask one question on this?
Yes.
Whatever happened to the interconnection discussion between Minneapolis and St. Paul and the question, if the Mississippi was polluted, what would we do? Are we still even actively working on that?
President Becker, I checked with our Director of Water Treatment and Distribution. There was a study to determine both the feasibility and the effectiveness of it. That was done a long time ago. And the study did not recommend moving forward with it, instead finding other ways to safeguard the water supply. And so we have not moved forward with that. One of the ways that we have high confidence in our water supply is that we actually have 2 different types of filtration that manage different types of issues that you might see in water. So Fridley has one, and Columbia Heights is completely different. So we do have a level of protection with those 2 different filtration processes.
Okay, thank you.
You can go to the next slide, please. A specific question was, how old is our system and do we see issues with it? And the answer is our system underground of pipes that carry sanitary and stormwater, but primarily sanitary, is very old. Sanitary especially, which is the blue bar, over 100 years old, almost 50%, almost half of our system is over 100 years old. Let's go to the next slide. Everything on the scatter plot that is red is in our analysis as something that needs immediate replacement for good asset management. So we look at the likelihood of something failing, of pipe failing, and the consequences of that failure. And the higher you are on both of those scales, the more we have to invest and invest quickly. When we have presented in the past our utility rates, you can see this in it. You can see the what I'll call the criticality of the infrastructure that needs to be improved. You can go to the next slide. You can go to the next slide. There we go. We are, in addition to doing the necessary work underground to fix the aging system, at the same time, we're also bringing some creative work to the streets in our stormwater management. So a good majority of our stormwater is handled by our underground system of tunnels and pipes. However, we are experiencing an increase in localized flooding citywide. It's an increasing problem with rain events that are more severe and shorter, drop more rain, more severe in nature. So we are doing more in our capital program to handle this on the street. So one way we're doing that, here's a few pictures here. This one is at 22nd and Monroe Street outside of Edison High School. And then this other one on the right is the installation of what's called a filtration chamber. We both want to capture and clean the water before it hits the system. The one on the left captures and cleans it. The one on the right is more of an underground filter out the debris that we don't want in the stormwater. Both are included in our regular capital work now as a matter of course. It's important investment for us to make to handle the effects of climate, rapidly changing climate. You can go to the next one. And I believe this is my last slide. And just to hammer this home a little bit, our capital program really has to respond to climate. And I showed you some things that we have built to do that, but we also need to do larger scale and longer term modeling of where we have the greatest issues. We did over the past year a pretty significant effort to model using under partnerships with the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization and MWMO and the Minnehaha Watershed. Oh, I'm going to get it wrong. With our partners to model where we have the biggest problems so we know where to make the investments. It doesn't mean that we don't experience problems in other areas, but we do. It's such a big issue to address. We do need to know where to focus. So this is exciting work. We have right now $5 million a year that was approved in last year's budget to continue this modeling work and continue to focus our efforts where it's needed most. I believe that is my last slide. You can go to the next one just in case. That must be it. That's a lot of capital information all at once. It's my pleasure to provide you with it. And as I said, we don't often get a chance to just talk about our work outside of either a crisis or a budget proposal. So I really appreciate that opportunity, and I will stand for any questions.
I'm going to open the floor. Board Member Cowgill, I apologize for missing your request earlier. Would you like to take the floor?
Thank you, President Becker, and thank you, Director Hutchinson, for this presentation. Incredibly instructive and helpful. I had a couple of questions, and maybe they can be answered, maybe not. I'm wondering if Public Works, on that last piece, since we just spoke about it, is if Public Works is working with MPRB on this work on managing large rain events, and particularly interested in how we are, or if we are quantifying where stormwater storage is happening. How much is the city storing on their space? How much is the park board storing? Is that something that's even possible to look at?
President Becker and Member Cowgill, I really appreciate that question because it gives me an opportunity to highlight the really close partnership we have with the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. Our staffs work together pretty seamlessly on this and many other things that we do together. We are working with you quite a bit on flood mitigation. I'll just give you one example. We're attempting to reconstruct Worth Parkway, and we're discovering together with your team that we have a lot of water that moves through the park property underneath to the roadway, and together we have to find a solution here so that we can build a road that lasts. That's just one example, but I know that we have a very tight connection with the team between Stephanie Johnson, our Director of Surface Water and Sewer, and with sorry, it's going to come to me. We do work with him Jeremy Barrick, thank you, and with Jeremy Barrick quite a bit.
Fantastic. So how many stormwater storage areas does the city have? I know there are 2 on the south side. Are there others around the city that the city owns?
President Becker and Member Cowgill, there are more than 2. I don't know the exact number. It's something I could provide back to you. I can give you a few other examples. We have one that is in Northeast that is pretty near to Edison School. We have one that we have just constructed also in Northeast, but at the edge of the city near the border with, it would be
Columbia
Heights.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm happy to provide you with a listing of our stormwater retention ponds. We have quite a few.
Okay. No, that's helpful, and I maybe I'm getting too myopic on that, but I do have commissioners who are often asking about kind of who's doing what with retaining stormwater, and what I see is that more and more the city with the innovative BMPs around stormwater retention is investing in that in a significant way, which is helping a big concern for the park board, which is our water quality in our lakes, which we again this year had an issue with. So appreciate the thinking. The other question that I had, it's way back at the beginning, but I was looking at that great graph around the 20-year streets funding, and I noticed that there weren't any federal grants for 2020. Was that right? And do we expect any? Did I miss anything on that? Or is there a reason why in 2020 we didn't get anything for additional funding?
President Becker, Member Cowgill, it's a 2-year cycle for congestion mitigation, air quality, and CHAP and SDP grants, Surface Transportation, Transportation Alternatives, CMAQ. That is probably the reason that it's not showing. But I would need to look into the details of that, but likely it's a 2-year cycle for application and award.
Okay,
but look into that.
We don't expect any additional grants for the rest of 2020 for streets improvements.
Not President Becker, Member Cowgill, not that I would put into the category of the standard grants that we would show on that particular chart.
Okay.
But if there are, there may be other grants that the city chooses to apply for surrounding any of the events of the last 3 or 4 months.
Sure. Okay, two final quick questions. One is maybe just something that I would be intrigued about, and maybe that I could maybe come back with, and maybe I could get this from my staff as well. I wonder, is there an evaluation of combined enterprise projects just across all kind of public works, including park board? If that data is available, or if we could figure that out, I would just be intrigued to see that that number, or that impact. And then the other is just curious about COVID construction cost savings. Have we found that that's significant, that in some way it kind of balances out, because, you know, some projects are, they get delayed or what have you due to some of the COVID impacts of maybe engagement or how quickly a project can be done, but you have something like Hennepin Avenue that is going a lot more quickly because there's no traffic. What have we found anything yet, or is it too early to tell?
President Becker and Member Cowgill, what we're finding is that we're able to stay on schedule with our work program for 2020. It took a tremendous amount of work to make a safe workplace for our employees.
Right.
But we did that as safe as we could make it, and continued with our construction program. It's important that we deliver what we say we're going to deliver, and that also that we protect our workers. And I think we found a way to do both. For 2020, I don't anticipate any impacts related to COVID. Very minor. I will say very minor impacts. I don't want to say none. Very minor impacts related to COVID.
Thank you very much.
Board Member Coville, do you have any other? Okay, thank you. I would like to acknowledge Board Member Fletcher, and also afford you the opportunity to be recorded by turning on your microphone.
Thank you, President Becker, and apologies again for arriving late, but I appreciate this conversation.
No problem. Next on my list to recognize is Board Member Wheeler.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Robin, thank you for that presentation. I remember when we met in a downstairs place last year, and you did a really good job and brought a lot of stuff. And I went through all your stuff ahead of time. I found it really engaging. Couple things that jump out at me. One is that I live on Bryant Avenue South, and you know, it's funny how we live places and we pay attention to what's going on. We were supposed to have our street, which is in miserable shape, because we have it's a huge bus, it's a huge bike, it's a very narrow street, and it hasn't been repaired in ages. It was supposed to be done in 2020 according to the original plan, and now it looks like it's going to be 23 or 24 before we're done. I'm delighted it's happening. I got the stuff on it, but it seems to me like we're pushing out a lot of stuff, and maybe we were just too ambitious when we first set up the program. And I'm concerned if it's happened here, which I'm aware of because I live here. I'm wondering if that's happening in other places.
President Becker and Board Member Wheeler, I was aware of what was happening with Bryant. It was pushed out, but then it was pulled back forward. So that's a next year project now. We know that there was a lot of concern, and we have pulled it forward. It's not uncommon for us to have to modify our capital program. Yep. We try to minimize that, but there are sometimes external factors that where we have to either push a project out or pull a project forward, and Bryant was one of those projects. But we were able to keep it kind of in the realm of what we know our residents and businesses were expecting, and it is back to schedule next year.
And is this happening other places regularly or just once in a while?
I think it's a once in a while.
Okay. That's good.
It's a once in a while, given the quantity of the projects that we have that I showed on the. And when I showed those 3 slides with all the projects, that doesn't include the sub projects of the paving program. I mean, there's even more. So given the quantity of that capital list and those projects, I would say it doesn't happen very frequently. Okay,
I really appreciate that. You made I used to be the chair of the finance committee at City Duluth. I was a city council member, and so I used to handle the budget and look at all that stuff, and I paid close attention to it. You made a comment about the fact that, you know, sometimes labor rates change and materials change, and you kept talking about, have you ever seen prices go down? Or do they always go up?
President Becker and Member Wheeler, I have seen steel go up and down.
Yeah.
Yep, definitely. I've seen labor go up and down.
Okay. Well,
And those are two really big drivers of project costs. So I've seen some down, and steel especially is volatile.
One last question. I'll try to do this very, very quickly. Thank you for your patience. I certainly appreciate that. Sanitary sewers and storm sewers, that was a huge issue in Duluth because of all the waterfall in Lake Superior and wanting to protect the lake and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm well aware of the difference in separating them out and doing all that. Do they cost about the same to do? Does sanitary and storm, are they similar in cost per mile?
That's President Becker and Council Member Wheeler.
That's okay.
That's a really good question that I don't have an exact answer to, but I will tell you that the age of the sanitary system makes it especially difficult to reconstruct.
And it's very deep, and
it's the deepest. It's the deepest of the infrastructure, and it is the oldest of the infrastructure. And I know that sometimes, and Councilmember Fletcher knows this too, that sometimes when we are doing these repairs, we're literally sucking old bricks out of the bottom of the pipe, and that's difficult, laborious, loud, time-consuming work. And those are the kinds of things that would drive costs up.
One of the things that I used your statistics there, or numbers. It looks like it costs over $5.25 million a mile to do sewer.
I would have to check that.
Yeah, well, you had so much per foot, and I
did. I skipped that slide. That's right. Yeah.
So okay, all right. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Other board members have questions? Other board members have questions? I would like to say, first off, as somebody who did work on the financing for the street project and was very concerned about the downward slope of our paving condition index, it's really gratifying to see things start to be happening with this. We did the parks too, and it's easier to go around and go, wow, there's a new park. It's less exciting to drive around and go, wow, there's a new street or a new, water main. But it's really exciting to see change finally happen, and that this is going to have an impact in the city. And I just want to tell you, I'm just really pleased about that. And I get the ramp up and how much more you have to manage, but I'm really glad you have the money and things are going to be better. So I want to thank you for that. The only other question I had, and this again, David asked a personal one, Hennepin County was doing work on sinkholes. Are you guys participating in any of that? I've got one on the street, and Public Works just keeps filling the hole, which magically dirt is going somewhere under the ground, and I don't know where, but are you guys working on that? It's a little sinkhole so far, but...
President Becker, we are not actively working on a formal sinkhole study.
Okay. Okay, I just thought I'd ask. Because you people keep, every year just come and fill the hole up again, and which I appreciate, but the street's kind of starting to go like this, but I thought I'd ask. Once again, anyone else who has any questions? Going once, going twice. Okay, thank you very much. We really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming and giving this presentation. It was great. All right. We have the next item on our agenda. And I need to pull it up on my phone. The next item on the agenda is a presentation by the finance. Oh, I'm sorry. May I have a motion to receive and file the presentation?
So moved.
Second.
We have a proper motion before us without objection. The report will be received and filed. Item 5 on the agenda is a presentation by the Finance Department on the revised 2020 budget, Phase 1. I will call on Micah Intermill to present that report. Welcome, Micah.
Thank you, President Becker and members. So in the interest of time and out of respect for the City of Minneapolis members of the board who have received this information many times in many venues, and in the case of the mayor was the creator of this information, I'll provide a brief overview of the city's financial situation for 2020 and then stand for questions. So the city faces 3 separate but interconnected financial challenges. First, we have a sudden and deep revenue loss related to the pandemic and associated recession. Second, we have unanticipated expenses related to the pandemic response. And third, we have unanticipated expenses related to the recent civil unrest and the need to rebuild large parts of the city and the local economy. Phase 1 is the first of 2 phases intended to respond to the first challenge, the sudden and deep revenue loss. And in total, on that score, the city is looking at a shortfall of $156 million in 2020. If staff could advance to slide 9, which includes a summary table, I can just talk briefly through, yep, right there, perfect. So phase 1 really focuses on the administrative implementation of actions already announced or adopted by the mayor and the city council. So the first action is a hiring freeze, which you can see in total across all funds saves about $23 million in the 2020 budget. The second is a partial wage freeze. So for politically appointed officials and non-represented employees, there's a full wage freeze. For our bargaining unit employees, it's a partial freeze depending on the various labor unit that an individual may belong to. But in total, that wage freeze saves $6.1 million across all funds. The third item here, the mayor has recommended delaying or deferring several large IT system purchases, as well as in collaboration with Director Hutchison and the Fleet Services Division of Public Works, there are a number of vehicles that were slated to be replaced in 2020 that will not be replaced this year. Those 2 items together save about $6.1 million across all funds, or excuse me, $10.1 million across all funds. In addition, there is some non-essential discretionary spending related to travel or postage or training. That saves about $2.9 million in all funds. And then the final item here is a 15% reduction to professional services contracts across the enterprise, saving about $16.2 million. So in total, these, again, administrative implementation of items already been discussed saves about $58 million, leaving $98 million to be solved in phase 2. And that phase 2 discussion will happen over the month of July, as the mayor is set to make a presentation to the city council on July 9th. And the council will deliberate over a few weeks and ultimately adopt that recommendation with or without modifications. That's to be seen on July 24th. So board members had sent questions in advance, in particular regarding the health of various city funds. And detail on the financial position of the funds and how our cash and fund balances stack up against financial policies can be found in the 2020 council adopted budget book. Schedule 9, which is at the very, very end of the large budget document, lays all of that out. And in general, our fund and cash balances are very healthy. I think the only fund that is below the requirement is the sanitary sewer, and there's a financial plan in place to build the cash in that fund. So it's extremely helpful to have cash on hand right now, but we do want to be mindful of not over relying on the use of that cash, given the uncertainty inherent in the pandemic emergency. We just simply don't know how long the emergency will last. We don't know how it'll ebb and flow. We do know that cash is our safety valve. And when things get really tough, that is something we can turn to be able to continue to maintain our operations. So we, in the Finance and Property Services, are mindful of that and advising the mayor and council as such that, we just want to be very careful in terms of how we use those reserves. So that's my brief presentation. Any questions on the specifics? President Becker, I think you may be muted. I think we're still muted. President Becker, I think you're still muted.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Awesome. I was just asking, does anybody want to ask any questions? And does Board Member Fry, your board member here, I guess, want to make any statements?
No, not other than I very much appreciate the work from finance in putting together not just this budget, but the several amendments to both 2020 and then working on 2021 simultaneously. I know it's been a heavy lift and multiple lifts, and very much appreciate the work.
Hearing no other question, I do have a couple myself, if I can just do a couple quick questions. What's the tax collection rate that you're presuming for 2020 at this point?
So, President Becker, it's a good question. Going into our planning, we started with an assumption of a 92% collection rate, and much of that is related to just general recessionary pressures always reduce the in-year collection rate. Some of that is property taxes that are delinquent and may be paid in a later year. Some of it is maybe actual losses on the books that as folks challenge their valuations. Also, we weren't sure what the impact of the decision by Hennepin County to abate certain fees if folks paid their property taxes late. We didn't know what the impact of that would be. Right now, we're seeing a collection rate of about 94%, so it's better than what we had anticipated. But again, we're not sure. We haven't seen the parcel by parcel data, so it may, by the time we get to year end, it may not be 94% if folks are paying their whole year now as part of their first half payment.
Second question on the downtown assets. I presume that is the sales tax primarily, and then the convention center, and then the Target Center, all of which must be ailing quite substantially. The Viking Stadium, is that first the state's problem, or is that our problem, or is that not in the 2020 numbers yet?
So, President Becker, on the Downtown Assets Fund, you're absolutely right. The biggest shortfall is, and impact to that fund, is the reduction in sales tax revenues that we are receiving. And so, on average, on a typical workday, and this is as of 2017, the city imports well over 100,000. The number off the top of my head is about 130,000 people. Those people come to town, they buy salads downtown for lunch, and associated with that, they pay sales tax. since that's not happening largely right now, those taxes are down. Likewise, our convention center is not able to host events right now, so their revenues are down. The Target Center is a contractual payment, so the events not happening there right now has an impact on our taxes, but not on our direct payment from the vendor who manages the Target Center. But all of the economic activity is depressed right now. The stadium does not come into play in the city's financial picture until next year. So this is the last year of debt for the convention center. Next year, the city will start having the debt payments netted out of the local tax collections prior to those being remitted to us.
Okay. So if there was a shortfall, they get the money first and we're second in line, basically. Okay.
That's correct.
And then we also are seeing some declines in utilities. Is that just people not paying their bills, or is that something else?
So, Madam President, the projected decline in utility revenues is related to, again, the not having that 130,000 people in the city turning on a faucet or flushing a toilet.
Okay, got it. That makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. All right, those were my questions. Thank you very much. That one slide was perfect. That was exactly what I was looking for. Thank you so much for that. Does anyone have any other questions? Anyone have any other questions? All right, then I'd like a motion to receive and file the presentation.
Second.
All in favor? Let's see, we have a proper motion before us without objection. The report will be received and filed. Announcements. Are there any directions to staff?
Yes, President Becker, this is David Wheeler again. I mentioned this when we were doing the receiving of the minutes. We had asked staff to take a look at, there was sort of a delayed, it was a time issue with regard to two of the projects that we were approving. And there is a very easy fix to that, and I would request that we just ask staff to accomplish that and make it happen. And I don't think it's going to be a complicated thing at all. Maybe we needed a motion. I'm not sure we do. I think if we just ask staff to take care of that, then it will be so.
All right, without objection, we will receive that direction to staff. Any other objections? Or I'm sorry, any other agenda items? Any other directions to staff for the next meeting? Clerk, when is the next meeting, please? Do you know?
President Becker, our next meeting of the board is July 22nd.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, we're concluded all business to come before the board without objection. We stand adjourned. Thank you so much to everybody who makes this happen. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.